Caring for friends or family members who have disabilities or chronic or terminal illnesses can be exhausting physically, emotionally, and spiritually. That's why it's important to care for yourself. Respite services can provide that brief, beneficial break from caregiving. This help is available to families and caregivers providing ongoing care to individuals of any age. To learn more, visit carechoice.nd.assistguide.net. We are here for you, so you can be there for them.
Are we ready to welcome an amazing panel up here to the stage? Yeah? Yeah? Well, we are going to jump right into our Navigating the Lifespan panel, and we have some amazing ladies that are going to be joining me here, and we're going to learn just a little bit more about them, and then we're going to jump right into some questions. If we have some time, and they don't know this, I'm going to say if any of you have a question for them, nothing like putting you all on the spot, right? And so the other thing I also want to mention is we have 3 Chris's on the stage here that have joined Deb, but for the sake of this panel, they changed my name to Christine so that I could be part of this Chris, Crystal, and Christy. Yeah, I took my glasses off. Maybe I should have brought those. But we have just an incredible group of ladies here that we want to go ahead and introduce to all of you. Just a quick, I know in my notes here, is there another video that needs to be played? No, we did that right in the beginning, right? Thanks, Shannon. Okay, so let me introduce to you the 3 ladies. Chris Megstead, would you go ahead and wave so everybody knows who Chris is? She spent most of her career in marketing and public relations. In 23, her and her husband, Kevin, took in their son's 2 children due to a divorce, drugs, and alcohol. They obtained guardianship within the first year. Chris retired in 2015 to spend quality time raising these amazing, beautiful children. Speech, occupational, physical therapies were all utilized to help the children reach age-appropriate skills. The children also engaged in play therapy to assist with emotional issues. On May 10th, 2022, Kevin and Chris adopted the children. It was truly a magical day. That same year, Kevin and Chris were nominated by Senator Kevin Cramer and receives the Angels in Adoption Award, honoring individuals and organizations making extraordinary contributions in adoption, permanency, and child welfare. Yes. Today, you will see Chris still remains very active in organizations that support grand families, I love that term, in growing epidemic in our nation. Chris says, I'd be lying if I told you the journey was easy. Is it ever easy? But it's so worth it. Every single minute watching those 2 children succeed. Let's give Chris a round of applause for being here with us today. Next up, right next to me, we have Crystal Chemis. Crystal is 35 years young and lives in St. Thomas, North Dakota. Brownie points for anybody that knows where St. Thomas is, right? We do. We have a couple people that know it. She's married to her husband, Patrick, and they have 3 kiddos, Genevieve, who's 17, Briar, 6, and Quinn is 5. Her son, Briar, and daughter, Quinn, were both diagnosed with autism when they each turned 3 years old. Crystal utilized the Ann Carlson Early Intervention Services, transitioning to special ed services through her local school district, and utilizing self-directed services through the state granted through our DDS waivers. Professionally, Crystal is assistant for Walsh County Emergency Management, 911 Weed Control, works in gaming for Grafton Blue Line Club, and is a parent advocate on DDS Council. In her spare time, I think she's got some spare time, she says, she enjoys singing, reading, playing softball, crocheting, and napping. She wants to make sure she gets that napping fit therein. Yeah, napping is one of her favorite pastimes. Crystal shares that at the end of her day, she's just human, aren't we all? A human who happens to have made other humans that need a little extra help, which then in turn means she's needed a little extra help too, and so might you. Knowledge is power, so let's learn and grow together. Thank you, Crystal, for being here with us today. And in the middle, we have Christy Wallace. She's originally from Memphis, Tennessee. Her family moved to Bismarck 4 years ago this month. Welcome to Bismarck, and I'm glad you stayed here. We have 2 biological children. They are ages 12 and 11, and they also have 3 foster kiddos, 3 years old, 18-month-old, and 15-month-old. So do you think she probably likes a nap or 2 as well? Absolutely. The two youngest are the ones with diagnosis. She never dreamed. I never dreamed I would be here, is what she says in life, advocating for such precious children, but feel like it's found her heartbeat. This is where she belongs. We're so glad to have you here as well, Christy. So, to kick off our first question, because we're just going to dive right in, right? We're going to go deep and we're going to go quick. So, what are the struggles you face having a family member with an ID or a DD diagnosis? Who would like to start? Which one of the Chris's would like to start?
They're looking at me.
So it's you, Chris.
Well, one of the things that our two children have ADHD, and that came from alcohol and drug use during the pregnancy. So one of the things that we have a hard time with is the unknown. What's going to happen next? We chose medication after a number of different trials, and we don't know when they're gonna need a different medication, when things are gonna change. We don't know what their behavior is gonna be like sometimes. I think, and if I'm really honest, I think that the opinion of others is extremely difficult. And I say that because there's so much controversy over ADHD. Some people don't believe it's real. Some people don't believe in medication, and unfortunately, they're really willing to share their opinion when they haven't lived the life or walked the walk.
Anybody else want to add to that?
So, I feel like I'm holding this really close. Sorry. Mine is a little bit different because my kiddos are in foster care. So some of my struggles that I have are due to I don't have access to their medical charts as a foster parent. I don't have, I can't get on there and message their doctors or have appointment reminders or anything like that. It's just basically I'm left on my own to figure all of that out. It's also a lot on the family unit is what I wrote down. From July 2022 to June 2023, I spent 52 days away from my original family unit, my husband and my two biological kids, whether that was with the youngest or Slater. So it's just a lot on a family unit to have mom away for that long. Mm-hmm. And also I would say my main struggle is that with them in foster care is that there's a daily fear that I one day will have to give up these medically fragile kids that I've poured my everything into. And one day I might have to give them up and allow someone who has no idea at the extent that they need, I might have to give them away. I know. Sorry, we can end on a lighter note than that.
No, the question really is what is the struggle that you face as a family? I mean, these are real conversations with real needs and real struggles, right? And this is how we learn and we grow and we connect, is by hearing you be vulnerable to share that real struggle with us. So thank you. Yeah. Why don't you share a little bit about your...
Yeah, my struggle is a lot same with Chris's, is, you can have your sensory stuff, your behavioral issues, but my biggest struggle is the constant battle of what you should and shouldn't do based on opinions from professionals. You have your doctor saying one thing, your speech therapist, your occupational therapist, your special education teacher, your friends and family. It can be what I think is best in comparison to what my husband thinks is best. So you have constant differing opinions, and it's a lot of time just a cycle of trial and error of what works and what doesn't work, and you continue on the circle because one thing that does work doesn't work the next day. And it's so frustrating because you want to be able to do everything for your children and make sure that their needs are met, and their needs differ on a daily basis, and if they can't tell you what that is, it's a guessing game. So.
Yeah. Can any of you relate to these three ladies up here? Yeah. So let's flip that question around now. We talked about the struggles that you face, but let's talk about the joy of having someone that has an ID or DD diagnosis. And we'll go right to you in the middle.
So I think it should be, I didn't exactly say the diagnoses that mine have. So Slater, our 18-month-old, he has Down syndrome along with fetal alcohol syndrome. He has heart defects. He had a cleft lip and palate. He has a whole slew. He's had skull surgery and everything. So he brings this sense of togetherness, like this community. He's built this community that he doesn't even know about yet. You know, we have the walk coming up, the Designer Jeans walk coming up. We have 36 people coming. He's not even 2 years old yet. Like, how have you touched 36 people's lives? That's just amazing to me. He is extremely unique, and he's funny, and he makes us laugh. He does this thing where every time I put his pajama shirt on him, and he has long sleeves, and his shirt is like hanging off of his hand a little bit, he always looks at every single night. He'll look at it, and he just laughs. And we all laugh. It's just so unique. And so he's changed us as a family, just seeing things through his eyes.
So good. Yeah. How about you?
So I said that just that my kids are pure, authentic. You know, they don't know that they're different. They love deeply, loudly, unapologetically. You know, so as much as we have the struggles, we have the joys too. And they've taught me to be more patient, more understanding, to appreciate the little things, to slow down. So, yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. And how about you, Chris?
Yeah, I would agree with Crystal. You know, one of the things that's most rewarding for us is watching their successes. When we got the kids, it's been over 10 years ago now. They were 2 and 1, and Caden was a year behind in developmental growth. And so we've been through the speech and the OT and the PT and BSEP for a couple of years. And now you look at him in school, he's a very intelligent young man. He's got his social skills together. And, you know, he is really a lot of fun. One of the things that we just got yesterday was a paper. You know how kids bring home tons of paper from school. We got a paper from Michaela, who is our 11-year-old, and they asked what the best thing about Michaela was. And she said her confidence. And I was really touched by that she felt confident.
Yeah. So tell me more about that. I mean, I think I know the answer, but tell us more. Like, why did that touch you so much?
Because they've been through a lot. You know, I would be lying if I told you this was an easy journey. We had so many things going against us as grandparents raising grandchildren. We had the other family. You know, they were not happy. They made our life pretty miserable. And the kids then went through transition. Whenever they'd go visit their grandparents, they'd come back and they'd go through transition. So it could be a week, it could be a couple days, they'd sit in their room or whatever. So to think that Michaela now, after all of that emotional and that emotional turmoil mostly, to have her feel like she's confident is wonderful. That's what we want. We want her to be confident.
Well, and it's definitely a testimony, isn't it, to the care that she provided, the stability and the support that you and your husbands provided. Yeah. So let me ask you this question, because there might be a parent in this room here today, or maybe a friend of someone that will be, that's from someone that's sitting in this room. They may have a friend that will get a recent diagnosis for a child. I know I have had some friends that call me and they're just, confused and not really sure what this means. The baby is still in utero or whatever it might be. But what would be one thing that you would tell that new parent that may get a diagnosis? What would be or maybe what would you tell yourself if you looked back 10 years, right? What would be some advice that you would share?
I'll go first, I guess. That it's okay to feel your feelings. You know, you're going to be scared, hurt, frustrated, mad, overwhelmed. You might feel lost. Feel them, process them. Don't ignore them. Don't shove them down. Don't fill up your schedule. My coping mechanism was trying to learn everything about everything so I was prepared. And I was prepared, but I was not feeling my feelings. And that's okay. And you're going to go through that multiple times, constantly throughout your child's life, because you're going to have your first new diagnosis, and then if something else comes up, or your first conflict at school or with another child, or, when they get a job, anything like that, you're going to have all these overwhelming feelings constantly. Feel them, share them, talk to somebody about them, find a little village of people, that you feel comfortable talking to about it and process it.
So let's unpack that just a little bit more, because what I heard you say is I did everything, and I was prepared, and then I was really prepared, but I never felt my feelings. So were you really, really, really prepared? Is there really an opportunity to learn everything you need to know?
My therapist would say no.
And I'm not her therapist.
I'm big on therapy, guys. My therapist loves me. But no, I wasn't prepared. I felt like I was because I knew all the things, I poured through policy manuals. I read through century codes. You can know all the logistics, but you're not fully prepared until you're prepared with yourself and your own feelings.
Oh, so I love that. So what I heard her say is prepare with yourself, meaning get grounded, right? Be solid in who it is that you are, and then maybe come to terms that everything else is figure-outable. Yeah, I love that. How about you, Chris? Chris.
I wrote myself some notes, and this one I thought about a lot, and so I have a couple of things that I want to say. Research all your options, medically, socially, emotionally. We just recently took Caden to I Can Bike. How many of you have heard of I Can Bike? Amazing. This kid was so scared, and he was riding bike by Wednesday. It was a very emotional day for me. Reach out to other families. Find other families that are in the same situation, because, boy, I tell you what, they're a great resource. Know the diagnosis isn't the end of the world, but rather the beginning of a better life.
I think you need to repeat that.
Know that the diagnosis isn't the end of the world, but rather the beginning of a better life.
Yeah.
I think consistency is really important with these kids. We have a schedule, and we live with our schedule year-round. We don't change it in the summertime. We go camping every weekend, and the kids are still in bed at the same time. So I think consistency in a schedule. We even bought a Skylight calendar, which is an electronic calendar, and everyone's color-coded, and everybody checks it every day, and that really helps them. Communication. We have family meetings. Ask them what's going great, what's not going so great. And then we talk about things that are going on that we need to change. Then respite care. Please take advantage of respite care. We haven't, and we need to, because our village has gotten much smaller being our age. So respite care is important. And maintaining a relationship with your spouse or significant other. Kevin and I get up an hour early in the morning to have coffee together, and it's probably the best time of the day. We can talk about what's going on with the kids, what's going on at work. We can just talk about whatever we feel like, politics, anything. So keep communication and that relationship going strong.
So good. So many things I'm hearing in there is about self-care, right? And honoring and keeping those relationships sacred, but then also that consistency to become predictable on what that day in, day out is going to look like. So great. Thank you, Chris. Okay, let's go right to you in the middle, Christy.
Okay, so I have the way you think today will change more than you can imagine. All the fears and uncertainties change as you get further into your child's life. You realize that their life actually isn't over. It feels like a defining factor, but in reality, it's a redefining factor. So once you get those diagnoses, once Slater came into our driveway and with all these diagnoses, and Eugene has chronic lung disease, he's hooked up to all of these monitors. They're like, oh, he won't be able to do this, he won't be able to do that. All of those diagnoses weigh on you, but they redefine it. Those diagnoses don't define them or their life.
I think that is so good. Did we hear that? Yeah, it doesn't define you, right? Your heart defines you. What it is that you're purposeful on, and what you're thinking, and what your passion, and who it is that you are, that human part, right? Beautiful. Okay, so here's a question that I know obviously everybody in this room is here because this is part of the community that they're part of. But there's a lot of community of people that are outside of this room that really have not had a lot of exposure to folks that have ID or DD, or maybe even general public, right? When you're out and about and you have your child and maybe you get some stares or some looks or not quite how to interact with you all. Let me ask you this question. What would you like to say to maybe that general public? What do you think would be important?
Yeah,
How can we create awareness and educate?
So, like I said, Slater had a cleft lip and palate, so that was like his most defining feature. You know, obviously when you see him, I mean, it was very extreme. It was really bad. I have some amazing before and after pictures. If you want to come find me, I'll show you. I love showing off pictures of my babies. And Eugene was hooked up to oxygen and heart monitors, and anywhere we go, everybody always looked at us and was like, wow, yeah, that's a lot. I had kids that came up to me with Slater, and one little girl said, "Did he get stung by a wasp?" Like on his lip, and just that I would always tell him, I'm like, they look a little bit differently than we do, and that's okay. But he loves playing peekaboo. And so then they would start playing peekaboo with him, or I'm like, why don't you, do you like Bluey? We love watching Bluey. Just kind of like the same things that they would know. Like they're just like, they're just like you are. Also, so he still has a holes in his palate. He's had his lip and his palate repaired, but he still has holes in them. So one thing that I'm starting to learn that really has been getting under my skin, and I've talked to my husband on how to handle it, and I'm not sure, so any advice would be great from anybody. But since he still has holes in his palate, when he eats something, it comes out of his nose. So it looks like he has a runny nose. So people come up and they're like, "Oh, he must be sick," or "Oh, you need to wipe his nose," or then they go to try to wipe his nose, and it's a very sensitive area. It's very protected because he's had so many surgeries already on it. And I don't like people coming up and trying to touch him anyways. That bothers me. But I'm like, nope, that's just his Cheez-It he ate for snack. You know what I mean? Or the macaroni, that noodle that he'll shoot out of his nose when he sneezes. So, yeah, that just that sensitive area. I'm not.
You're still navigating it, is what I'm hearing.
I am, yeah, but with just with that one. But his lip, I don't know. I think it helped break me in, I guess, whenever we were dealing with the lip and all the monitors and everything. So.
Yeah, wow. Well, at the end of this, if we have some feedback for her, we'll, certainly want to pull her off to the side and give her some of that feedback. Yeah. But what I heard you say, Christy, and I think this is so important, is we talked earlier after Sue finished, is that we finished speaking, is that we're human, right? And the thing that connects us all is that we are human. And what you just said earlier, what I heard you say was you're finding ways to connect the unconnected. Meaning, how can we find common ground with the person that's right there in front of us, right? You'll learn a little bit more about me tomorrow, but I don't have anyone in my immediate family that has a DD or ID, but I do have a brother who has stage 4 cancer and has had major surgeries and now has braces on his legs, and my daughter is a special ed teacher out in the Fargo community right now, and I used to do work in college for several organizations around here that support individuals with ID and DD, and so I don't know, I don't know your guys' path, your ladies' paths that you're walking right now, but what I do know is that connection. Connection does matter. How do we connect the unconnected? How do we bridge that gap? And I think all of you are doing a tremendous job, and every single one of you in this room are finding ways to be a bridge, right? So that we can provide opportunity for awareness and education. Okay, how about you, Crystal?
Yeah, so one thing that I would tell the public about my children is to ask questions. We're not going anywhere. We're active in our community. We go to church, sporting events. We just went to a corn maze this last weekend, grocery stores, 5Ks, Summerfest. We're going to be there. They're going to be there. So I'm not going to apologize for my children's actions, that seem out of the ordinary, because they're being kids and they're having fun. But if you come up, ask questions, how can I best support you right now? Is there anything, I can do to help? Or, they're going to come up to you. My kids are very, very lovey, and they will run up and hug a stranger. They have no sense of safety in that measure. So I'm lucky that a lot of the people that we be around in our community are very open to that. So, if you have questions, ask. Like, my family had questions when Briar was younger. He had a big problem with, if you said no to him, it was an immediate meltdown. So it was, instead of saying no, we say, let's take a break, or all done, or let's easy. If we just went easy, Briar, then he'd start calming down. So sometimes just changing up your words and your verbiage is all it takes. And just being aware that, okay, let's just ask questions. What can I do to make it easier being around you? Or what can I do to help support him?
So I want to dive a little bit deeper into that as well, because when you say ask questions, how does someone like myself feel like I have permission to ask the question? How is it that you all, or all of us, right, that can give permission to people? Because oftentimes, let's be real, they'll just look, maybe, don't really know what to say or what to do in this moment. But how do we give permission for others to ask the questions?
I don't know. My mom said that I would always talk to a wall if it would talk back to me. But whenever I get those looks, you know the looks. You know the looks that you get, and the feeling, the immediate uncomfortable. You just say, yeah, it's a little different, isn't it? Like, what do you think about that? Do you have a question you want to ask him or me? I'm just the one that just go ahead and say it. I don't know, but that might not be for everyone. That's just me personally.
Yeah, well, and I just know that I've been in spaces, right, where I can observe and go, ooh, no, like, and I'll go up and I'll make comments and say, hey, noticing that you're observing that, like, what's your question? So I just was curious on what you all had for giving people permission to ask the questions.
I've just gone up to other parents and said, do you need help with anything? Is there anything I can do to assist you right now? Or how can I best support you?
Yeah.
Because you might need a little support, or you might need a little help. It's pretty evident when you do.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and I think it's important for all of us here, right? Just to be thinking about, we're so much always thinking about ourselves sometimes, that maybe we need to put ourselves in the other person's shoe that maybe don't have the same type of exposure or experiences that we do, where it's like, we got to give them permission to be able to come to us so we can educate and we can, create awareness for them as well. Yeah. Love that. Okay, well, we're going to go a little technical, okay? We're going to talk about the school system. Who wants to go first on this particular question? Should we pick the person first before I ask the question? But essentially, what's the biggest struggles that you have school-age children, right? Some of you have school-age children. What are the biggest struggles in the school system, and how do you navigate them? They're all looking at you, Chris.
Mine are babies.
I'll start with that. We haven't had a lot of difficulty with the school systems, and I think that's probably because I stay pretty darn involved. And when Caden first went to, he's a July 31st baby, and so he's on the very deadline of going to school. So he's a little bit younger. He's the youngest kid in the class, and socially you can tell that. You can't intellectually because he's grades ahead of where he's at. But the social part has been very difficult. I think one of the issues that we struggled with is the teachers. We had some teachers that did not accept that ADHD was a diagnosis. They thought that it was kind of crazy. We were giving them medication. And so they kind of fought back with us. And I thought that was very difficult, actually.
Any advice on how to navigate that, if anybody else is experiencing that? How to navigate when people are pushing back on you in the school system?
I think actually what we did is we have a pretty amazing child psychiatrist, and we scheduled a conference call with him and with the teachers and had him explain to them what these children had been through and why they were on medication and what it was like for them to have ADHD. Because ADHD, unlike some of the things we're talking about, is invisible. I mean, you really don't see it. I mean, you can see them being hyperactive or not sitting still, but it's still real. It's just not as visible as some of the others. And so the teachers just thought, oh no, they're doing so well. And that was only because we had made sure that they were doing well. We had gone through the right channels. We finally got the right medications. And so they were well behaved and sat still in class and weren't hyper. And so I think that it really helped pulling in a professional.
Yeah, having that communication, bringing in the professional, really a team, right? A team to help understand. Okay, how about you, Crystal?
So Briar is in first grade this year and Quinn is in kindergarten. My main issues that I've had with school system is when it comes to preschool, because it's not standard across the state. It's not standard city to city, school to school. It's difficult. So the way that preschool looked 1 year for Briar when he was 3 years old and he was permitted to be in school looked very different for what it was for Quinn. So I asked a lot of questions. I challenged them a lot. Didn't turn out the way I liked or the way I wanted, but I learned a lot about what I could do in that moment and who I could reach out to, my network of people that I, have grown within the community, within the state, just to get advice of who should I talk to, what should I say, what questions should I ask. And by going through that process, then every IEP that we've had since then, I've been able to sit down and ask more questions and dive in. And, for instance, our first IEP with Briar, we got near the end of the year and we didn't see, they're like, well, he hasn't met this goal yet. And I'm like, well, whereabouts is he? What's the data on that? And they couldn't provide it. They just, well, he's coming along. Okay, well, so their next IEP that we went through is like, okay, well, what are our steps? Here's our goal, here are our objectives, but we need to be able to scale this and figure out how we're going to be able to measure his successes. So step one, he's considered nonverbal. He talks way more than he used to, and it's great. He's still very difficult to understand a lot of the time, but, so our first one is, sign language, and then it's trying to use it and pointing, and, and the third step is saying the word without pointing, so we have like a whole scale system of where we're going up. So from meeting to meeting, we can see where he's improved and what step and what level he's at with that goal, where it's just not, oh, he hasn't reached the goal itself. He's reached all these mini goals, so then you have something to celebrate. So when it comes to the school and navigating it, I just think it's asking questions, figuring out what works best for your kid. Don't necessarily take what they think is best, challenge it. Say, why do you think this is best? How do you think this is going to help my child succeed? What can we do to push that a little bit further so we can see those successes, whether big or small?
Yeah, such great advice. Yeah. And I think I also heard you say that, every child, as we know, right, is individualized, and not the same plan will fit for every child. That's with whether you have an ID, DD, or no Ds, right? It's just every child is so different sometimes. Yeah, thank you. Okay, another technical question. Any of you have any experiences with the Medicare or Medicaid waiver? And if so, what have been your experiences with them?
I can't speak to the Medicaid waiver, but I can talk about Medicaid. Our children, when we were guardians, which is what we were for a long period of time, they had Medicaid, and it was really great to have because it covered all their services, which were many. But as we did not go through CPS, we did not go through the foster system. We did everything privately, which there are a lot of us that have done that. And so when we adopted, we lost Medicaid and all the benefits. So that's really unfortunate. And if we had gone through the system, we would have been able to keep it all. And so we're really lobbying hard with our legislators to try and get that to change.
Thank you.
With my children, we started early intervention with them when they're about 20, 21 months old, and through the Ann Carlson Center. And so once they qualified for that, they automatically got on a waiver, I think the DDS waiver. And when they were turning to 3, then it was they either needed a diagnosis or they weren't going to continue on with benefits. So we were able to get their diagnosis around 2 years and 11 months so that we could transition in. And we had a really great caseworker who, even though our diagnosis was autism, was like, nope, you're on this DDS waiver now. We want to keep you on that because you get more benefits. And I said, do it. So I didn't really know the struggles that other people face trying to get on that until I went into partners in policy making and started hearing from other people that how difficult it was. And it just made me very thankful that I had a knowledgeable case manager who was able to notice that right away and say, this is what you need, this is what you're going to want for your kids in the long run.
Yeah, thank you.
So I'm going to be honest, I had to Google this one because I had no idea what a Medicaid waiver was. I know what Medicaid is. I think that's the problem, that as a foster parent, these kids literally came into my driveway and we took them in as our own, and we are so limited to what we can do. I cannot call Medicaid and them give me any information. For the longest time, I didn't even have their Medicaid number because social services wouldn't give it to me. But yet, I spent 52 days away from we call it the OG Wallaces, the original Wallaces, advocate in the hospital with them, and not able to even call Medicaid and say, hey, what's the status on this pre-approval or anything like that. Nothing. I call and they say, well, you're just the foster parent, so we're not able to give you any information. So when I read Medicaid waiver on the questions, I was like, I don't even know what this is. That's the problem. And I know I'm not the only foster parent that has kiddos with diagnoses,
Well, and what you said there, it irks me when you say it, just the foster parent, right? Like that, remove that word just. I mean, it's terrible, absolutely terrible. Okay, we have time for 2 more questions, and this one is going to be a you and you question. How do you manage time for yourself and take care of yourself and your mental health? We know Crystal takes naps.
I take naps, and I have therapy every Wednesday at 1, scheduled in. Yeah, I just say schedule your time as much. You can schedule everything for your kids, and you can schedule everything for everyone else. Schedule yourself in there. That's what you need. So every Wednesday at 1, I have me and Amy time, and it's great. I have scheduled, just like Chris has scheduled coffee time with her husband, I have scheduled time at the end of the night for me to just relax for a half hour and read, because that helps me decompress. I schedule time with friends, like friends that I have that are not within the network of having children with disabilities as well, because you got to remember you are an individual too, and you have to take care of yourself, and sometimes you need a break from that. And so you need to have some friends that can get you out of that world for just a little bit. So.
Yeah, thank you. How about you, Christy?
I actually have a part-time job. I work at Chick-fil-A on Tuesdays and Thursdays. So a few hours a week, nobody needs mommy. I'm able to go and to talk to people and sell chicken.
And just say my pleasure. Just say my pleasure, right?
It is amazing. No, the people that I work with, I absolutely love it. And it's just time where nobody needs me. And I would say, I also put on here, I said, find your people and let them step in and help. Let them do that. Also, thrifting and coffee with friends is always a good idea. But to be deliberate, you have to schedule it. Like you can't just be like, oh, we should do that. No, you need to get it on the calendar or it'll never happen.
Yeah, if you don't make yourself a priority, right, you'll never become a priority. It's like you have to schedule it. Yeah, and I know some people think it's silly to schedule you and you time, but absolutely not. I'm a huge believer in schedule. How about you, Chris?
We really struggle with this because we're 64 years old. We're not in our 30s raising kids anymore. We don't have the energy that we used to have. And our village is smaller. We don't have mom and dad and aunts and uncles and that whole family to help us take care of the kids. We can't just say, okay, Mom, would you watch the kids? So we don't get out a whole lot. But I have therapy at 11 o'clock on Thursdays, and it's just amazing. It's really very good for me. I'm just going to say this so that everyone knows. In the United States, there are 7.1 million children that are living with grandparents.
It's powerful. So as we start to close up this panel here, haven't these ladies been great? Yeah. I hope that you can feel, as you've poured out to them, I hope that you can feel that they've poured into you as well. And just love and appreciate each and every one of you for all you do and being up here and being a voice, right, for making a difference. As we close out here today, I want you to be thinking about your best advice that you want to pass on. And we'll start with you, Crystal, and make our way down. Oh, you got to look at your notes. I put the notes away. This is from your heart.
Okay. Just knowledge is power. Never quit asking questions. Never quit learning. You're going to come into a lot of different things throughout the lifespan. You know, things are going to change constantly. So it's going to be a constant learning experience. And don't shy away from that.
I said, don't assume, don't put them in a box, and do not compare. These kids are not puzzles to figure out. You go with them, and it's their life. I find that I start to get stressed whenever I compare my kids to others. I can't tell you. So the first time I went to a designer jeans moms get together, and I saw these kids with Down syndrome acting like my 12-year-old who was wild. They were running and jumping and sweating and wrestling, and and Slater, I think, was like 1 at the time, and I was like, oh, he's gonna be able to do this just like everybody else, you know? And it was just ignorant of me to even put him in that box and just to assume that he would never be able to do any of that, you know? So.
Love that. Go ahead, Chris.
I think the most important thing, and I didn't believe this when I was younger, is to schedule. Like I said before, our day is fully scheduled from right down to when they take their meds before bed at night, brushing their teeth at night, everything. It's on a schedule. They go to bed at the same time. Electronics are off at the same time. I just truly, truly believe in a schedule. And chores. I believe that if you give kids chores, they build some self-esteem. You know, they feel like they're doing something. It doesn't have to be anything major. I had coffee with a friend this morning, and she said, yep, I have my grandson clean the rails, the stair rails, you know, that go up the stairs, the wood ones. He just dusts them off. I mean, how simple is that? But he feels like he's doing something. So I believe in that, and I really, really believe in respite care.
Yeah. Well, our time with this panel has come to an end. Weren't they amazing? Yeah. We got a couple standing ovations for them all. Once again, let's thank them as they exit off the stage here. We're just so very grateful for you all sharing your wisdom. And as always, they're going to be around for a little bit, so you can ask questions of them that maybe we didn't get to a formal Q&A here, but just wonderful knowledge right there between all three of them. So you can go ahead and have a seat again, or should we pretend this standing ovation is for me, right? Yeah. My fun table up here in the front. So once again, a reminder for this evening's social. We have Family Feud, we have, right, Name That Tune, and we're gonna need to redo this room just for a bit. So we're gonna ask that you, in just a moment, not quite yet, take a 30-minute break. You can go out and visit the vendors. There's going to be some appetizers out there that you can have as well, and be back in your seats right at about 4:30 to kick off our game night. But before I excuse you, I'd like to take a quick moment, and we want to thank all of the sponsors. We may have some of the sponsors that are right here in the room with us. Take a look at your back folder here, and you'll see the different sponsor names. If you see someone from one of those organizations here today, walk up to them and thank them. We could not do this without them. So we want to make sure that we know and they know that they're appreciated. Also, they have given monetary gifts. They're allowing us to have some fun this evening and throughout tomorrow. They've donated some in-kind services, so it's super important that we recognize them and we thank them for all that they've done to make this a possible conference here today. Okay, team, are we ready? Are we ready? This team up here is ready, but we're gonna get ready to transform this room, so go ahead and excuse yourself, grab some appetizers. But one more thing, connect with somebody that you don't know already. Let's connect, right? Sue challenged us. Connect with someone that you do not know already and get to know them. We'll see you here at 4:30.